with the zones using skin temp and core temp as factors, which is something that we've noticed a lot of importance towards. So for example, the science behind heat training, if you have a really high core temp and you're in a cool environment, the science basically says that like, hey, you can still be quite efficient there. You're not going to immediately lose power. But if you're in a hot environment, your skin temp is high and your core temp is high, the impact on power can be quite dramatic. And as you pointed out, if you try to maintain the power, you'll start to see heart rate decoupling. It's no longer directly linked to your power. It's the heart rate's just getting out of control. And that's one of the markers that we would look for with, if we're talking to a sports scientist or a coach, they're looking at power and then the heart rate and the core temp, and they're trying to see where is that decoupling occurring when your core temp and your heart rate kind of go out of whack and things sort of decouple a bit. That's really interesting if you're like that scientific. But for somebody else, we want to define a zone of like, okay, if your skin temp and your core temp are here, the algorithm and the science tells us this is a good zone for heat training. It's also where you start to ironically lose power. So we're trying to equate this to ways people can use it. Zone 3 is we're defining it, is ironically the zone where you start to lose power in a significant way. It's also the ideal heat training zone. So if you're going to spend like an hour on your bike.
So is this unique though for everyone? So, you know, if we're talking zones, you know, I'll go out and do a threshold test, you'll do a threshold test, or whatever way we arrive at our threshold figure. And we'll both come back and plug it into our Garmin, and now we'll know what zone we're in. Your zone 2 might be 400 watts. My zone 2 might be 200 watts. We're two different riders. Is there two different baseline temperatures, or do we just run at basically the same temperature as humans?
Right now, we are running it. So the zones is more generalized guidance right now because we don't yet have the ability to give more individualized guidance. But the reality is exactly what you're saying. You know, at the end of the day, it is very individual, down to the fact that we're doing quite a bit of studies with some of the women's teams that we work with, specifically around menstruation and how that changes core temperature. Recovery changes core temperature. There's a bunch of different factors that change, maybe even your own.
Time of day?
Time of day could change, your core temperature. So I think for each individual, it's going to vary. Now, the challenge we've tried to use is like, okay, what can we define? And in this case, what's the objective? So the objective is try to give people clear guidance of when they're going into a zone where they're going to lose a lot of power, because that's really valuable in a race. And we've had 2 of those. Yeah. And then the same on like heat training, right? Danger is really important. We want to flag that. And of course, if you're a high performing athlete, you know your body well enough that like, okay, you're okay here for a little while. But if you're doing heat training and you're anywhere near the danger zone, what's the point? Because then you're actually taking, you know, potentially recovery away from your body, and you're not able to recover and do the next session. And we've seen tons of athletes that are doing without core, let's say, heat training sessions, and they're seeing worse results because they're overcooking themselves essentially.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm a bit slow on the uptake. So let me kind of paint a picture on this. So if the 2 applications I'm thinking about are the 2 different sides to this coin. So I'm in a race. Does it connect into your Garmin at the moment? I have a connection in. So I've picked up one of the core temperatures. I'm playing around with it, but I'm essentially like I was with my power meter 20 or 12 years ago, whenever I got up before I read Training and Racing with a power meter from Andrew Cogan. It was just really a number that when I stood on the pedals hard, it got big. When I came off the pedals, it got light. It's kind of like that for me at the moment. It's just another number on the screen. I'm like, I don't really know what my baseline is, so I don't know what my deviation is. But off what you're telling me, I'm kind of envisaging a situation now where I'm in a race and I'm noticing as I'm cruising along in the bunch that I'm at zone 2 power. My heart rate is maybe upper end the zone 2, even though my power is normalizing around lower end the zone 2. But my temperature's starting to creep up to zone 3 or zone 4. So I can take action like take off a gilet, start to dump water over my head to take that temperature back down to try and get my heart rate, power, and heat zone more aligned. That's the heads of the coin. To flip onto the tails of the coin, I'm thinking about it as the exact same situation, but that's the effect I'm looking to achieve.
Exactly.
I'm out on a training ride and I'm looking to actually spend time in zone 2 power, but get my heat zone up to zone 3. So I might overdress for this session. Is that my interpretation right, or am I totally
no, you're
butchering
absolutely
that?
right. So we were sort of, if you were reading through like all the material we put on the website, we've tried to like condense the science, but we're sort of saying the paradox of heat zone 3, because 3 is the most important one. It's where you get, if you're training, that's your optimal heat training zone. That's where you're going to get the optimal adaptations. And when we talk about that, we're going to say, yeah, you're getting vascular dilation benefits, you're increasing your hemoglobin, and you're, ultimately going to get performance gains from that heat training as long as you're accumulating it over time. And then exactly the opposite, right? If you're in zone 3 and you're racing, that means you're starting to see those decoupling happening, and you need to be cooling yourself if you want to continue to perform at a high level. So if you've got an ice slushy, if you have an ice sock, if you're racing on a bike, that's an option. There's some really cool technology that I can't talk about because it's not really quite common yet. But in the tour, you'll see other methods of cooling in the race that will start to be more prevalent. We've also seen a lot more bottles.
You mean they've innovated on the women's tights filled with ice?
Yeah, right? I think that's a low bar, but you will finally see innovation beyond women's tights. Thank goodness. But yeah.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please click up here. There's another video I know that you're absolutely going to love. Click over here and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our amazing upcoming guests.